Hey guys, this is Ray, owner of Double R Diesel, and behind me you can see our 2013 shop truck on the lift. And how many of you guys out there have an older model truck like we've got that's got over 100,000 miles on it, and you've got a little loose playing in the steering wheel when you drive it down the road? When I get the camera turned around here, I'm going to show you some things that we're going to do to our truck. One thing that we've already done, a couple of things that we're about to do that should help stiffen up the steering on this truck and make it drive a whole lot better. And I think it's something that if you hadn't already done, you might consider doing to your high mileage Ram heavy duty truck. So let me get the camera turned around and I'll show you what we're talking about. All right, guys. So you've got an older model truck like we've got here. You got 100,000 miles or more on it. And you notice that when you're going down the road, you got a little loose play in the steering wheel. May have a tendency in some severe cases to wander a little bit, and you like to figure out how to tighten things up. Well, most commonly, there's three sources that causes a lot of steering slop on these heavy-duty Ram trucks. And number one is your track bar, and the track bar bushings will wear out. Now, there's some very nice options on the market with adjustable track bars, but they can get kind of pricey. And I mean, you're talking $400 or more for some of these adjustable track bars. With our truck, it did have a wore out track bar. I'll show it to you. Let's see. Yeah. Right here. Look at that bushing in the end of that track bar. It was rusted and worn, and so there was a lot of play there. So we replaced it with a stock replacement unit from Moog. I'll have those up on our website. They're very inexpensive, less than $100. And yes, they're cheap made, but it's just as good as the OEM piece and a lot cheaper than the adjustable units that are out there. Not saying that the adjustable units are bad. They use some really nice solid bushings that really tighten things up, but most guys really don't need all that. So we've already done that. And the next thing we're going to do is install this Synergy suspension steering stabilizer box brace. So what you've got there is a brace that mounts to the sway bar mounts on both sides of the chassis. So you're tying your front frame rails together by installing this, and it allows you to mount this bearing here that'll work in conjunction with this retaining nut for your pitman arm that will basically stop any deflection that your steering box may have developed over a period of time. And this is what we're talking about here. So what can happen here is over a period of time, you get a little wear in your steering box. And when you turn the steering wheel and this pitman arm moves, the steering box itself, the shaft itself, will have a little deflection side to side. And that creates slop in your steering, of course. And the steering box brace will basically tie this steering shaft where the pitman arm is attached to both sides of your frame, which will really stiffen it up. So we're going to get that installed. It's relatively inexpensive. There's many on the market. One of the more economical ones is the Synergy setup, and we do have those on our website. And also, one final thing is, if you know anything about these Ram trucks for many years, the steering shaft or the intermediate shaft, which runs up under the dash that connects, your steering wheel to your steering box down where we were just looking a while ago, there is a rubber isolator, and I'll show it to you a little later when we install these, that basically keeps the vibration and some road noise out, of the cab. But that rubber isolator can break down over a period of time, and if you install these bushings, it'll tighten things back up, as where the slop comes from having that rubber isolator wear down. So these are really cheap. We don't have these on our website, but I'll post a link on where you can get them off Amazon. I think they're like $10 for a couple of them, so relatively cheap there. So we're going to get these installed on our truck here. I'll show you, you know, just a couple of shots from the process, but it's really relatively easy and it can make a huge difference. So let's get them installed. Okay guys, first thing we got to do is get this pitman arm retaining nut off. We can leave the pitman arm alone. We're not going to move it, but we do have to get this nut off so we can replace it with this new nut with the shaft on it that's made into it, so it'll mount into our support bearing. And you'll need a 46mm socket, I believe, for that, and then 15mm socket to take your sway bar bolts loose so we can drop the sway bar. Okay guys, I've already got the sway bar disconnected, 2 bolts on each side, and you can see the sway bar is hanging down. And I've already got the crossbar with the Synergy kit hanging on our factory sway bar with a couple of bolts that are included with the kit that you're going to mount it with. But you see how it just slips over and it's going to sandwich between the sway bar itself and the frame rails where it mounts. So what I'll do is swing it up and mount it with the new included bolts that came with the kit. And you see I've got the nut off the pitman arm, and I will be installing this new combination nut and shaft for the bearing on this steering box shaft here. So let me put the camera down, get everything up in place, get the bolts started, and I'll show you what it looks like before I tighten it up. Alright guys, so I've pretty much got it done. I have not tightened down the 4 bolts that hold the brace and the sway bar all together, but I've already tightened down the bolts that hold this bearing. This bearing slips over that special nut with the shaft made onto it. That's how it ties it all together. So what you want to do is make sure you leave these loose to begin with. I mean, get them all 4 started, but leave them, you know, where you got some side to side play in this brace, and then tighten the bolts and nuts that's included with the kit to pull this bearing up and get everything centered. So by leaving the bar itself, the brace bar, loose, and then tightening the bearing bolts first, it aligns everything, gets everything in alignment. And then once that's done, which is where we're at right now, we can go back and tighten down these 4 bolts, 2 on each side, that hold the brace and the sway bar together. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to move inside the truck. Okay guys, let's talk about these intermediate steering shaft bushings that we've got here on the table that I mentioned earlier. So let me show you one. They're just machined out of aluminum, and they have a tapered side and then a flat side. Really important to notice that the taper side goes in first when you install them. So let me show you where they go and what they do. So most of these Dodge trucks from years and years, I couldn't tell you how far back they've been like this, but if you can see right there, I can't point to it and hold the camera, but see that little rusty looking shaft right there? That is basically like a safety pin that goes crossways in this isolator right there. There's rubber inside there that basically isolates the short intermediate shaft going to the steering wheel from the main steering shaft that goes down to the steering box. And over time, that rubber can break down. And see how that flexes right there? See how that little pin, rusty pin's moving? So those little bushings, you'll take 2 of them and hammer one in, tapered side first on one side, spin it over, hammer the other bushing in from the other side, and then put probably like a radiator hose clamp around it to retain them in place, and that'll take up that slack that you see right there. So we're going to knock those in and get them installed. Alright guys, I just got through knocking the bushings in. There's one on both sides, and I'll just show you this side right here. See right there, see the shiny aluminum around that kind of rusty looking pin. So that takes up the slack that you can have right there. So one thing to note, by doing this, you may get a little more vibration and power steer noise in your steering column, but it's well worth taking up slack. So real simple, real cheap, takes up some slop in your steering shaft. So we're going to put a hose clamp around that, guys, to make sure it doesn't work loose, but there you go. All right, guys, that wraps it up. We've replaced 3 things on our 2013 truck here that are quite common wear parts in terms of steering. We replaced the track bar. We've added a steering box brace. We've also added those intermediate shaft bushings. Those are 3 areas that typically get some wear after 100,000 miles or more on these trucks, that if you replace and add those things, it makes a considerable difference on how your truck drives. Now, do keep in mind, if you got drag link, ball joints, steering sector, those kind of things, if they're worn out, I mean, this won't fix those items, but what we've done can make a considerable difference with a minimal expense. So as always, guys, thank you for following along. God bless each and every one of you, and we will see you again soon.